guidance takes away the power that you want to give the client to be able to solve their own problem. I would want to emphasize on the fact that counseling is about empowering the client so that by the time you are done with that person, they have a mechanism within them to be able to deal with the challenges in their lives. You know, empowering means that once you leave me or you walk away from that relationship, then you can be able to make use of the skills that you have learned. You are able to think differently from how you thought before. Your emotional functioning has changed to accommodate the situations in your life and probably any other situations that may have been there before. Are we together? So we can talk about counseling. I wish my slides were here. Are they going to take long? Because I think it's faster than me writing. So let me first give you some definitions of counseling before that is sorted. Now, we look at counseling as a relationship between a counselor and a client. And that relationship, it's a professional relationship between a counselor and a client. So one person called the counselor, another person called the client. And this relationship makes use of skills and techniques. Okay? So the relationship makes use of skills and techniques to help the client to be aware of their own personal resources. So when we talk about helping the client to be aware of their own personal resources, then these resources are the ones that they use to help them to solve the challenges or the problems in their lives. All of us have personal resources. But the reason why we need that extra help is that majority of us are unconscious of those personal resources that we have. When we talk about personal resources, it could be something within you. We all think differently. We are unique in our own ways. So it could be your way of thinking that is different from another person. It could be the way you respond emotionally to situations that is different from another person's. It could be also an aspect of your personality. Some of us we have the tenacity to withstand certain situations that others are not. But sometimes the problems that come in our lives make us or rather the situations that we face put us in such a situation that we lose sight of whatever it is that we had that can be used to solve that problem or even the other problems in our lives. And that is where the counselor comes in now. So the counselor can help you, first of all, to think of this new situation from a different perspective. So thoughts are very important in counseling. The way I perceive something determines whether or not I'm actually able to solve that problem. And most of us, the reason why we are stuck in the problems in our lives is because we look at it only from one perspective. And probably that is what we have been trying to do over time, and it is not helping. The other thing as the counselor that I'll help you see is your emotions. How involved are your emotions in this particular situation? Could they, in fact, be the stumbling block? So then I help you to deal with those particular emotions. Then we look at your behavior. How are you responding to other people and the situations in your life? When something happens, how do you behave? When you have a problem in your marriage, how do you behave towards your spouse? How do you respond towards them? Both in terms of your emotional reactions and also in terms of your behavioral reactions. So in short, what we are saying, the counselor helps you to open your eyes. You begin to see yourself differently. You begin to look at the situations in your life differently, from a different perspective. And when that factor is introduced, then you can be able to now see the solutions that you need to have for those particular problems. As the counselor, I do not have to tell you what action to take, because now you can be able to define the problem for what it truly is. Am I communicating something? So let me repeat the definition. That counseling is a relationship between a counselor and a client that makes use of specific skills and techniques to help the client access their personal resources, which they now use to solve the problems in their lives. That's one way of looking at counseling. And I don't want to use so many definitions so that we do not, I don't want to confuse you because we have a very short time to deal with this. Then we go to counseling skills. Now, before we go to counseling skills, what is a skill, according to you? What's a skill? Sorry? Very good. An ability to do something. And with ability comes competence. So it's a competence, it's an ability to carry out a certain task or to do something. So the same way also we are talking about an ability or a competence. So that therefore means that counseling skills are a set of techniques or interventions that enable us to carry out the task of what? Of counseling. Are we together? That they are an ability. It's a competence. And as we know, competences are learned. So therefore, skills are acquired. It's nothing that we are born with, which is why we are here, so that we can be able to learn. I'm emphasizing on this because sometimes I come across people who ask me, but Mwalim, do you think I'm really cut out for counseling because I'm like this and this? And yet you're telling us that for us to be able to counsel or to be effective counselors, that we need to behave this way. It's about learning. So skills are acquired, competencies are acquired, which is why it's important for us to understand that through learning and diligence, then we can be better and more effective helpers. Okay? So I'm going to list a couple of counseling skills here, which we are going to very quickly brainstorm before my laptop comes here. And then I am going to now give you the input that I have in regards to the skills. So the first skill that I will list here is active listening. So just think of any skill that you're comfortable describing from your own understanding. It doesn't have to be a perfect description. So we have active listening. We have observation. We have questioning. We have silence. We have minimal prompts. We have attending skills. We have empathy. Unconditional positive regard. We have genuineness. Yes, let's start with these ones first. What about? Okay. So, okay, thank you. All right, there we go. So I've listed 9 skills there. And I always like to first start from what people know before I can look at what I am introducing. So let's start with active listening as a skill. What is active listening according to you? So there is listening. So of course that tells us that there is listening and then there is active listening. What is active listening according to you? Don't worry about how perfect it sounds. Whatever comes to mind, we are learning. What is active listening? So she says, listening with no disturbance. Thank you. And she's right. I'm imagining that you're talking about the disturbance that happens on the counselor's end. So listening, that means that you pay attention to the client. With no taking, your attention should not be anywhere else. Anyone else who wants to add to that? Active listening.
Active listening is you are attentively listening to the person speaking, and you're positive about it. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So she's saying attentively listening to the person who is speaking and you're positive about it. Anyone who would like to add to that definition? Any additions?
Thank you. It's listening to what is not being spoken.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very good. So she's adding something else, listening to what is not being spoken. Now, active listening means that you're listening to both, to the content of what I am saying. Like right now, my words, the words that I'm speaking, that is the content. You're listening to the content of what the person is saying. You're listening to you are also paying attention to their nonverbal behavior. That's why she's talking about what is not being said. So you're paying attention to the content of what is being said, nonverbal behavior, as well as the voice. So when we talk about voice, I'm talking about intonation, pitch. For example, you can tell when someone is angry, right? You don't have to be told that someone is angry. Sindio? Maybe this person, if it's a person who is light like me, maybe the color will change and my face will become red. What else? My veins maybe will start popping out. Okay? Then what will happen to my voice? Will I be speaking normally the way I'm speaking right now? No, my voice is going to be raised. I'll probably be shouting, or there's going to be some tension in my voice that tells you that Jane is angry. Now, when you can pay attention to what I am saying, as well as my voice, as well as my nonverbal behavior, maybe I'm even shaking. That's the nonverbal behavior that we are talking about. Maybe I'm even sweating. My face has already turned color. That's the nonverbal behavior that we are talking about. When you can pay attention to these factors, then you're listening actively. So therefore, it is listening with a purpose. Okay? You're listening with a purpose. And the purpose for which that you're listening with is so that you can be able to respond appropriately. Sawa sawa? So I think I'll do this concurrently now that... so that's the introduction that we did on counseling and even the skills. So I don't want to go back to it again because of the time. And my first skill is that one, active listening. I hope they will access the slides. Yeah. So the first skill is that one, active listening. So the description, as you can see that you're observing the nonverbal behavior, you're understanding the verbal content of what the person is saying. You are also listening to their voice or their intonation. So what is the purpose of listening? Now, most of us, every other day, we keep communicating with our family members, with our friends, even at work. But here is the funny thing. Most of us don't listen. We hear. So we need to understand what the effect of listening on the person who is speaking as well as you who's actually listening. So what's the purpose of listening? First of all, listening communicates to the person who is speaking that you're interested in them as well as what they are saying. An interest in the person who is speaking as well as what they are saying. And I'm imagining if we were to do a survey right now and I were to ask you, when you have a problem, I'm imagining that you have quite a couple of friends. Okay, depending on who you are. Some people keep few friends, others we have quite a number of friends. But out of all your friends, there are some whom you prefer to go and tell your problems to. Now, what is it about that person that makes you to want to go to them whenever you have a problem that you need to share? Anyone? What is different about that person? Mm-hmm. 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 Very good. So she's saying that they take interest in what you are saying. Now, listening can be interrupted by a lot of things. When she says that the person is taking interest in what they are saying, we have quite a number of factors within us and even externally that stop us from taking interest in what the person is saying. Probably before you speak, I am itching to say something. You know, for those of us who are talkers, instead of paying attention to the person, you can't wait for them to be done so that now you can also say something. You can put in something. And that, of course, means that you're not listening to this person because it's your agenda that you want to communicate. Some of us, we are listening thinking, how do I respond? What do I tell them so that they feel like I am actually helping? You know, like I'm imagining most of us have been in a situation where maybe a friend has lost a loved one, a very close person to them. And you're wondering, what do I tell them that will make a difference so that they stop looking so miserable? And you know that is exactly what stops us from actually being effective in such a situation, because you're worried about exactly what to say. So listening so that the person feels that you have understood them. That's the other purpose. That when you pay attention to what the person is saying, they actually feel understood. All right? And not only do they feel understood, but listening also makes sure that you and the person you're listening to, that you have a common understanding. So that what you're telling me is actually what I understand. And when I respond to you as I listen, you can tell whether or not I actually get what you're saying, depending on how appropriate my response is to what you have said. Are we together? Am I making sense? Uh-huh. So that is active listening. The other skill we have is observation. And it is closely related to that skill. What is observation? Where did I put my water? Observation, anyone? Is it because people have just eaten? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Observation, I will just say as a lay person, observation is the use of visuals, the use of eyes to observe the certain behaviors from the counselee or the client.
Mm-hmm.
And then you pick them even as they speak or as they behave, from the way they enter the room. Yeah, the behavior.
Mm-hmm. Very good. So she's saying that observation is that ability to take note of what the counselee is doing. And when we talk about taking note of what the counseling is doing, we are talking about their nonverbal behavior, their actions. So I like to call it the ability of the counselor to see and make appropriate interpretations, because it doesn't stop there. For observation to actually be effective, you have to see, and then you make appropriate interpretations of the client's verbal and nonverbal behavior. For example, what we mean by appropriate interpretation is that our gestures and our nonverbal behavior can mean a lot of things. And so if you're not keen to understand what exactly you are seeing right in front of you, then you will not be able to actually get what is going on within the client. Men are the ones who like doing this. What does this tell you? What is happening to this person? I don't know whether it's because they don't grow hair. What is this person doing? What is happening within them? Eh? He's thinking. Maybe we should get a gentleman to tell us so that we can improve the accuracy of our interpretations. Eh? What is usually happening when you do this? Sometimes I see them even doing, the whole head. There's a gentleman. Which one? Oh, the young man. What does this mean? Or what? I'm not talking, not the meaning per se, because there is nowhere it is written, the meaning, but what does this tell you in regards to the person you're observing? Mm-hmm.
That one, it shows that I've reached a peak whereby it's too much.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of resigning.
You have reached the threshold,
threshold
of what you can take.
Yes.
So it's like you're telling the speaker, now let us please pause.
Yeah, pause.
So you have heard. So when you see a person do this, probably as the helper, you want to observe silence a bit. You can help him process what is going on. All right. Now, if a person starts shaking, what does that mean? What does that imply? Their hands are even, sometimes you see even people starting to, if someone was holding something, now they can even drop it. Mm-hmm. Nervousness. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Stressed. What else? Anxiety. They are anxious. And the same case also applies to sweat. Now, let us go to the eyes. Can you tell from someone's eyes when you're dealing with someone who is depressed? Can you tell? How do they look? Tired. What else? Distant. Sometimes they also have a subdued look. You know what we mean by a subdued look? Okay, I'm sorry to use this because it's the only thing that's coming to mind. Kama kuku imenyeshewa. You have given up. And you can tell that from someone's eyes. You see the importance of learning to not only listen to what I am saying, but even to look at me in terms of my nonverbal behavior. When I'm talking about nonverbal behavior, I'm talking about the gestures. We gesture with our hands. I'm talking about my posture, Maybe I have come, I've sat upright. Some people will even slouch a bit. Some people will bend down and probably not even establish eye contact with you. So that tells you a lot in terms of what is going on within them. Some people will start shaking, like I was saying. Some people will even start sweating. So it's very important for us to learn to accurately interpret what we are seeing in terms of people's behavior. Now, what's the importance of observation? The first importance or purpose of observing is that observation... Yes. Yes, very good. So Alfina has reminded me of something very important, that even the person's appearance and even their mood, appearance, mood. When we talk about appearance, you're talking about grooming? Yeah, grooming. How is this person dressed? Do they look neat? What about if it's a man, have they shaved their beard? You know, that also tells you a lot about somebody, we live in a community where right now, maybe because of moving to town, you know, in Shags, when something is wrong with someone, they can tell because they visit each other without any they don't need a welcome to come to your place. But now we are becoming more and more isolated. So when you see somebody starting, your neighbor used to be a very keen man in terms of their grooming, and now their beard, you know, it looks like it's not been shaved for a month or so. You need to start asking them, maybe, you know, just find out what is happening, maybe visit them, you know, such things to give them some form of support. If someone has neglected themselves, that tells you there is definitely a problem. Again, you can be able to observe the mood, even from a person's eye contact and their facial expressions. Okay, thank you for that, Alfina. So the importance of observation is that, first of all, when you're able to observe a client's nonverbal behavior accurately, you possess the richest source of empathy. We are going to look at empathy as a skill, but to look at it simply, it's your ability to be sensitive to what is going on within the other person. So if you're able to make observations appropriately and respond to the client appropriately, then it becomes, for the counselor, the richest source of empathy. At the same time, observation helps the counselor to be able to identify what we call discrepancies. Discrepancies are a difference, for example, between what I am saying and how I am behaving. That tells you there is a problem somewhere. If, for example, I tell you that my mother died last night, and then I'm laughing, is that normal? No. It means either my level of, you know, emotional expression, you know, there's a discord there. The way I express myself emotionally, there's a problem. Or it means that maybe I'm the kind of person who, whenever I'm faced with uncomfortable emotions, I laugh as a way of running away or trying to ease the discomfort. It could also mean that there was something between me and my mother, which is why that death probably has not affected me in whatever way anybody else would have expected me to be affected. Are we together? And that discrepancy means it opens a door for you as the helper to now be able to explore more with the client or to ask so that they can tell you exactly what is happening within them. Clarifying with the client is very important, and only through observation can you be able to do that. Okay? Any questions so far? I don't want to run like the fast express. All right, the next skill, questioning. Of course, we ask questions every other day when we are interacting with each other, but why would questioning be referred to as a skill? Anyone? Mm-hmm.
Being able to know what questions to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Very good. She's talking about being able to know what questions to ask. You know, Kenyans like to say, "Kuna maswali kama ya polisi." There is another lady over there who wants to say something, and even that gentleman. When you are told kuna maswali kama ya polisi, what does that tell you? The questions that you are asking, are they really making the other person happy? Are they helping? No. Uh-huh.
Being able to get more details and getting deeper to the story of the client. And there is the open-ended and the closed-ended. And mostly we are encouraged to use the open one, because when you use the yes-no questioning, you will not be able to get part of the story.
Very good. Now, she has added to her definition, she's talked about two types of questioning, open-ended and closed-ended questions. And she's saying that the appropriate type of questioning is what we are now calling open-ended questions, because you are able to get more information from the person as opposed to the closed-ended questions that will only elicit a very short answer or not an explanation for that matter. Now, those closed-ended questions, hiyo ndio tunaita maswali ya polisi. That gentleman over there had something to say. So the closed-ended questions are the ones we are calling maswali ya polisi, because they come in very quick succession, and you can only answer yes, no.
I would interpret questioning as a skill in counseling. Instead of I using the word questioning, I feel that the word probing is more appropriate. Because we ask these questions with the objective of wanting to acquire more information that will help the counselor, help the counselee identify a solution. So you realize that when you are doing empathic listening, questions will be popping up in your mind. And so it's not the normal question like those ones of our police, but you're just probing to get more information.
Very good. So questioning is actually a way of probing to elicit more information from the client. You know, when you probe, it's like you are trying to slowly, remove a certain obstacle. You're looking for information. So it's a way of probing to elicit more information from a person. And you have to be very aware of how this becomes a technique so that you can be able to use it effectively. Let me look for questioning in my slides. So you have to be very aware of how to do it so that then it is effective as a skill. So a way of probing to elicit information from others. So we have two types of questions. We have the closed-ended questions, the open-ended questions. The closed-ended questions, the reason why I'm calling it maswali ya polisi is, why did you do this? You know, it starts with why, do, did, have you eaten? What will be the answer? No. Yes or no? Did you go to Nairobi? What will be the answer? Yes or no? You can see how frustrated you're going to be, because you'll be thinking the client does not want to talk to you. Now, why especially, the questions that start with why, we call them an abomination in counseling. And the reason why we call them an abomination in counseling is because they suggest some form of judgment. You know, like for example, when I ask you, why did you do this? Are you going to be very quick to respond to me? No. So they suggest some form of judgment coming from you, which is why we try as much as possible to avoid them. Open-ended questions, on the other hand, they start with terms like what, when, how, and as a result, they are going to elicit more information from the client. How, what, when. Like for example, if I ask you, what did you have for lunch? You're going to tell me rice and what? I've seen rice somewhere. You're going to tell me rice, beef, and whatever it is that you had. So that means it's not simply the short answer that we were talking about in the closed-ended questions. If I ask you what happened between you and your father, the response is definitely going to be a long one. So that means as a counselor, by using open-ended questions, I'm actually minimizing my use of questions. Because again, you don't want to have too many questions when you're interacting with somebody. So you have to be very intentional about what kind of questions to ask. That way, again, you minimize exactly how many questions you are asking. Are we together? So what is the purpose of questioning? Of course, we first said that you get more, it's a way of getting more information from your client. That's the first reason why we use questioning. Another purpose of questioning as well is that it helps the client to explore certain areas. So if as a counselor you have seen that there are certain areas you have not attended to with your client, then you can use a question to go there. Let me use an example so that you can understand. If I noticed that my client has come to me, and when I was in the initial session, from my understanding, this person has two parents who are both alive. But then they are talking, maybe this person keeps on talking about their father, my father, my father. But I've never had this person talk about their mom. So I can now use that. That Alfina, I've heard you talk about your mom for quite a number of times, but not your father. You know? And I'm wondering whether you would like us to talk about him for a while. So I have somehow taken my client to a particular area for him or her to explore. Are we together? Yes, so, oh, it's switching. Yes, John, it's not moving. I don't know what has happened. Okay, let me just do it manually. I'm looking for this slide. Okay, yeah. So those are the purposes of questioning as a skill. That you help the client to explore themselves better. And also, it shows that you're actually interested in helping the client to make sense of what is happening in their lives. Because imagine if you were to talk to somebody, you come to me and for 20 minutes, you are telling me your story, but never at one time do I even ask a question. What does that tell you? I'm not interested. I'm just, like when you're tired and you want to shut down and someone is talking to you, you're telling yourself, I won't ask a question so that you don't keep on talking. So it's the same way. If you're helping, then it means that your questions show an interest in the client, first of all, in the person of the client, as well as in what they are telling you. So we go to the next skill, which is silence. Yes, please.
That as you ask, can you hear me? As you ask the questions, be careful not to ask questions out of curiosity.
Oh, yes.
They should be for the benefit of the client and relevant to the situation at hand. Yeah.
Yes. Very good. Thank you, Alfina. So Alfina is talking about curiosity questions when you are pursuing your own agenda as the helper as opposed to the agenda of the client. That whatever question you're asking should be to help the client, not you. And who would like to give us an example of a curiosity question so that we can understand? A curiosity question that is not benefiting the client in any way. No one? Ama we do picky ponky. Okay, let me give one so that we can move faster. Now, say you have a client. You have this lady, and lady sio kubagua, it's just an example, It's what came to mind. So you have this lady who is having an affair. She's married, she's having an affair with a different man. And when she comes to you, you now ask her questions like, so how many times have you met up with so-and-so? Where did you go? How long did you spend there? Is that a question that is helpful to the client? That's how we gossip. That's why we call it a curiosity question, because you're fishing for information to entertain you. Now, here is the difference. Questions that actually help the client. What attracted you to this particular person? When did you meet? When you met with him, what was going on in your marriage, or what was going on between you and your husband? Now, that is a question that actually helps the client. The other one only serves your agenda as the person who is listening or as the person who is asking the question. Okay? Yes. Right. Thank you, Alfina, for that reminder. We move on to the next skill, which is silence. Now, silence as a skill. How does silence become a skill? That you can keep quiet and that you're still helping someone. How does it become a skill?
When you're silent, you encourage the other person to continue talking. Yes, you give them that space to talk.
Very good. So she's saying that when you're silent, then you encourage the other person to continue talking. How else does silence become a skill?
Mostly when we are, it's on, when we are counseling with the bereaved, we listen more than talk, because most of the time they just want to be heard. And sometimes when somebody is grieving, you may not know which word may hurt them more instead of helping them more. So we listen more. Yeah.
Very good. So she's giving an example of when you're counseling the bereaved, that you listen more than talk, because they need more support. And so that is why you allow them to, just talk about, let it out. We call that catharsis because it brings about healing. And I think, before you speak, tell me your name, so that I just stop saying the gentleman. Maybe that is what else is making people to block me out.
Yeah, my name is Wycliffe. During counseling, when the aspect of silence, so the clients feel that is valued and also appreciated, and he feels good that he has the time to express himself or herself more to the counselor.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Wycliffe,
Yeah.
So Wycliffe talks about the client feeling appreciated, the fact that you're giving them that time to express themselves even more. That is very true. Now, silence becomes a skill in the sense that you're not using it as a skill when, like right now, I'm talking, you're not talking. You're not using it as a skill. Now that is listening. You're listening. However, it becomes a skill when you are intentional because it is applied under certain circumstances. Now, some of the reasons why we would keep quiet while in a counseling session with a client, number one, if your client starts crying. Number two, if your client also keeps quiet. Number three, in case maybe the client starts coughing or something of that sort. Now, the first two are especially important, crying and keeping quiet. Why? Because when a person is crying and then you interrupt them or you start talking to them, what happens? I'm imagining majority of us have been in a situation, maybe someone finds you crying and then they start talking to you. They think they are helping, it's not coming from a bad place, but what does it do to you? So they are talking about feeling like crying more. It triggers you to cry even more. Again, it also interrupts the process that is going on within you. You see, when you're crying, it's not just your eyes that are at work, even your mind. There's something happening because I'm imagining if you're crying, there are images probably in your mind that are bringing on certain emotions. And so if I start talking, I'm interrupting that flow. So again, if I am quiet, and then someone is, now you start talking to me. The people who are very reflective in nature can tell us this very well. You're talking, you're quiet, and then someone insists on talking to you. What happens? We have those people who don't talk a lot. So there's usually something, even on a normal basis. If you are not a talkative person, and you're quiet, does that mean you're idle because you're quiet? No. There's something that is going on in your mind. Process. So even in counseling, when the client keeps quiet, they are processing something. So the silence is to allow them that time. And it becomes a skill because most of us are usually very uncomfortable with silence. True or not? We want, if I'm not talkative, I want the other person to be talkative so that they can cover the silence. When the other person keeps quiet, I'm wondering, where do we start now? What do we say? So in counseling, we make it very intentional, and that is why it is important for us to recognize the places where we use it so that then it can be effective. Okay? And I think I've already mentioned the purposes already. It is to allow the client to collect their thoughts. It is as well to allow the client to also process their emotions. To process thoughts, to process emotions, and at the same time also, you are communicating acceptance and respect because you are not hurrying me along. You don't want me to fit into your calendar. Remember the discomfort that I talked about? Most people, before they get used to using silence, will tend to again, this discomfort will come up even in a session because they want to hurry the other person so that they can feel that void. But if you can sit with me in silence without demanding of me to again start talking, then it means acceptance and respect. Sawa sawa. Any questions so far? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, you are in a moment of silence. How long is it going to take?
Aha.
Remain silent for 2 hours, 3 hours. If the client is not talking, what do you do?
Okay, good question. Because and a very, very valid question, actually. So you have a client who's come to you, and they've probably been quiet for maybe 10 minutes, and you're wondering now, are we going to be like this for the whole session? Now, at the beginning of the session, we are going to look at that as a skill again. At the beginning of the session, we always indicate to the client how much time they have together with us. Like you can tell the client that this session is going to be 1 hour. So if my client is quiet, and I can tell that the silence is not a form of resistance. There is also the silence that comes from resistance. Those ones have been sent by somebody, maybe to come for counseling. Maybe it's a child, they've been sent by the parent. So they are an involuntary client. Maybe someone has been threatened by the spouse that unless you go for counseling, divorce. So they are there thinking now, they haven't come out of their own free will. So the silence sometimes can be resistance. But when you sense that the silence is not out of resistance, so remember again the respect. Wycliffe, we have 30 minutes to go before the end of the session. So when you're ready, we will continue. I am here. So I am here. When you're ready, let me know, and we will continue. You go back to you see, silence, also something that I did not mention about silence, I think it is there, that it denotes a very powerful psychological presence when you can be silent but present. And I'm not talking about physical presence. Physical presence is obvious. You can see me, But psychological presence means you can sense my presence in the sense that I am with you. So that means I do not allow myself to get distracted by anything else simply because the client is silent. I do not focus on other things, maybe people passing outside, maybe the painting on the wall. No. It means that I'm totally attending to the client. Have I answered your question? Not fully. Tell me what else is left. What is your name?
In terms of resistance, what do? You let her go or him go?
No. Yeah. When you have a client who is resistant, you need to first ask her or him, establish how they feel about being, we call them involuntary clients, how they feel about being an involuntary client, the fact that they did not, bring themselves by their own will. Once you have established how they feel, then you can talk to them about what they are likely to gain from counseling. Or you can ask them, what do you think made so-and-so to refer you? You can start with that as a point of exploration. Because then that would be, instead of dwelling so much on the resistance, that will take you now to the presenting issue as to why they had to come. Yes. Mm-hmm. Any other question about silence? All right. Mm-hmm. Then I come to you.
I don't know whether this is relevant now. That silence leads me to this question. Do I choose whom to counsel, like, for example, opposite sex, when it comes to marriage issues? Because this silence, or maybe trying to, when someone starts crying, you have to be silent. So, it may lead to other things because you want them to, to feel good. And you start to, So I'm just wondering, are there rules? Or, I know people who have, gone that way and they have really failed.
What is the next thing? I don't want I don't want to make an assumption. So what is you've talked about, I just want you to clarify. When you say that something else might happen or might come as a result of that, what do you mean?
Well, maybe this person is crying and you feel, maybe if it is an opposite sex, this person is a lady, the other person is a man, and you are counseling them alone without your spouse. So if this person starts to cry and you feel now, I want to make them feel good, massage kidogo. So are there rules?
Very good question. Now, in counseling, the issue of touch, I'm imagining that you're talking about touch as a way of comforting the person. The issue of touch is a very sensitive one. Don't touch your clients. Even when it's a female, even when you're of the same sex, don't touch the person. Who can tell us why we don't use touch in counseling? Or if we do, very sparingly, and you have to make sure that it does not harm the client psychologically. You do not want to traumatize the person so that when they come out of there, hey, nani, unaenda kumuona uko, the kind of things going on within that session. And maybe you meant nothing. Maybe you thought you were supporting. Why do we not use touch? Why is it a very sensitive issue? There's a lady over here.
We don't use touch because it might be misinterpreted depending on the client and their situation at that time.
Yes, very good. It might be misinterpreted. And I like the way she has said, depending on the client and their situation. What if this person, maybe they are yet to tell you, but what if they have been a victim of rape before? What if they have been a victim of abuse before? And then there you go and you start to touch them. Apart from being misinterpreted, also touch has a way of interfering with the process that we were talking about when applying silence. That whatever is going on in my mind, you interfere with it. Like say, for example, I don't know whether there is someone here who's ever been in a situation where you're grieving. And so maybe it's, you're even in a funeral. And then somebody comes and holds you, they pat your back, they even start, there's a way we do like this to soothe somebody, yeah? What does that do to you? What does it do to you if you've been there? Someone is hugging you, they are patting you, they are even rubbing your back. What does it do to you?
Again, thank you. Again, depending, it can cause you to cry more, or it can cause you to stop crying.
Yes, very good. It can cause you to cry more or even to stop crying. Either way, it is an interruption. So the processing of thoughts that was taking place, the processing of emotions that was taking place, again, it has been interfered with, and therefore, you are not helping the person. Even in as much as you think you're helping the person, you're not really helping them. Because when we talk about helping, it doesn't necessarily mean that to stop you from crying. That's the funny thing about counseling. Helping does not necessarily mean that someone is helped because they have stopped crying. Helping means that you process what is within you for it to come out so that it stops harming you internally. Are we together? Yes. Okay. So we can proceed to another skill. Hey, and I have to move faster.
Thank you. My name is Jake. What if it happens that maybe you are counseling someone via phone call, like it's an impromptu thing? How do you know that, because now you are not present physically, they cannot tell. How do you go about it when they are silent?
Whether you're not, when you're not physically present.
Yeah.
The voice. Remember, we are also working with nonverbal behavior, not just what we can hear. So the intonation. You can always tell, for example, when someone is about to cry, even when you're talking to them on the phone. If again someone goes silent, even if you're talking to them on the phone, you can still tell. So that's why as counselors, we really have to hone our skills in the sense that you're fully there, present for the client. I hope I've answered your question.
Now, you don't know what is happening on the other side. You have noticed they are silent. So do you just also keep silent? Yeah.
Oh, yes. You will keep quiet for a while and let the client, if you're asking if the client keeps quiet. Then the same technique, the same approach you are talking about, that you remind the client of how much time you have left and that you're still there, you're still present and willing to continue when they are, as and when they are ready. Yes. That way the person is not feeling rushed in any way. Okay. All right, we proceed? Okay, I want us to look at attending skills, even if it's not the next, because we are referring to it for I've referred to it for quite a couple of times, without even mentioning it. So attending. Now, the slide is already there, but our layman understanding of attending. What does it mean to you? When someone is attending to you, what do you expect of them? So that you say, I have been attended to. What is this that you expect of them? Anyone? Mm-hmm.
They're paying attention. Oh, Irene.
Yes,
They're
Irene?
paying attention to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes, they are paying attention to you. That means you are the only person or the only thing that's a priority at that particular time. Now, what we call attending skills, it denotes the counselor's physical and psychological presence. As we said, the physical presence is rather obvious, but our psychological presence, that is where now the issue lies. How do we communicate to the client that we are psychologically present? Now, a psychologist called Egan came up with a number of micro skills which actually explain the counselor's expected nonverbal behavior that communicates to the client that you're present. And he summarized these micro skills in terms of an acronym that we call SOLA. Now, SOLA is already explained over there, but I want us to talk about the specific behaviors that we have that have been covered under SOLA. Now, S means that we sit upright. Now, when we talk about sitting upright, it means that you do not slouch. You simply face the person squarely. That is what we mean by sitting upright, but not in a rigid manner, of course. Then we talk about the O, which is an open posture. What's an open posture? What do we mean by an open posture? An open posture? Mm-hmm.
I would say it's a posture that invites communication and doesn't make you seem like you are locked out and you're locking the person out from communicating.
Yes, a posture that invites communicating. Invites communication. Now, why would someone not feel like you have invited them? This is something that we are very used to sitting like this when we are having a conversation with people, or even when we are by ourselves. True or not? This comes very naturally to us. This is what we call a closed posture. Your hands are closed, your legs are also closed. So what do we call an open posture? It means that therefore, both your hands and your legs have to communicate what? Openness. And that is why in counseling, we do not hide behind a desk as counselors, because the client needs to also see your nonverbal behavior. They have to get that idea that you're actually open to interacting with them. And then we have L, that you lean slightly forward. Now, this one you have to be careful because you do not want to invade the person's space. It just means that you just slightly, you lean towards them. And sometimes you find that this is actually something that we do without even knowing. In the sense that if I'm crying, will you just sit there stiff-necked? Even if you don't touch me, sometimes you'll just find yourself leaning slightly towards me. Because you want to show me I am listening, I am here. Then the E is for eye contact. Again, with eye contact, we have to understand that you establish eye contact but without staring. Again, you do not want to spook the person, So don't take eye contact as staring into someone's eyes. It simply means that my eyes are constantly around, just the face area. That as a counselor, I'm not looking down, I'm not distracted by anything else. And at the same time also, that I'm able to even observe you in terms of any facial expressions. I'm able to see the expressions in your eyes, that kind of thing. Then relaxing. That even as you're doing all of this, make sure you are relaxed. You're not feeling, don't allow yourself to be anxious or even to stutter, to stammer, that kind of thing, or even to start fidgeting. Just relax. Now, what's the importance of attending as a skill? Attending as a skill, first of all, shows that you are interested in the person of the client and even what they have to say. Imagine if you went to somebody's office and then they are not even looking at you. Have you ever gone somewhere and you're talking to someone and they are not even looking at you? How do you feel? Yeah, you feel rejected. Sometimes you're even tempted to tell the person, I'm waiting for you to first look at me so that I can continue talking. Then you have to catch yourself because you are now in another person's office. So that's the same effect we have on the people whom we are working with. So it communicates an attitude of interest in the person of the client and in what they are saying. At the same time also, the clients, by feeling that they are listened to, it encourages exploration. What we mean by exploration is that process of the client just continuing to tell you how they feel, what they are thinking, what happened in their life, what has happened, etc., etc. Okay? All right. We move to, I want to do one more skill before I can give time for questions. We move to minimal prompts. Minimal prompts as a skill. I have to move faster. I've just seen the time. So minimal prompts. Now, what we call minimal prompts, you see the way when we are talking, we are in the habit of saying, continue, I'm listening. Those are now what we call minimal prompts. We call them brief verbal and non-verbal encouragers. All right? And so simply from the term encouragers, it means that they are used to encourage the client to keep on talking, that I'm listening. You're telling them that I'm listening, keep on talking. So if they encourage the client to keep on talking, at the same time also they show that you're interested in what the client is saying. You're interested in in what the client has to tell you. Allow me to do a marathon until skill 9, then I will allow questions. Then we have the skill of empathy. Empathy, anyone who's ever heard of empathy as a skill? Irene, you want to say something? Or you're just smiling at me?
Empathy allows you to put yourself in your client's shoes without necessarily making them feel Yes.
Very good. Yes, she's talking about putting yourself in the other person's shoes, but without making them feel the need to sympathize with themselves. Okay? Now, empathy, the reason, and I like the fact that she has mentioned that there's a difference between empathy and sympathy. In empathy, we feel with. In sympathy, we feel for. It's like I want to carry your load. Sympathy makes you cry, even with the person that you're listening to. Now, empathy, I like to call it, or rather, it's not my definition, even though I'm saying I like to call it, but it's the ability to put aside your own understanding of the world and to pay attention to the client's understanding of the world. That means, this is what I mean, all of us are different in terms of how we look at things. For example, you're looking at me. Right now, I'm your main point of focus. But if I were to ask him what he thinks of Jane, and I were to ask her what she thinks of Jane, the two would give very different descriptions. Why? Because all of us have our own internal world inside here. Our own internal world determines how we perceive people, how we see people. It determines how we see ourselves. It also determines how we see the world. Are we together? And that is why we can both go through an event, maybe a traumatizing event, but maybe I don't get traumatized, but the other person does what? Gets traumatized. What is the difference? This internal world, this internal frame of reference that is here. So what does it mean then for us to use empathy as a skill? As a counselor, I need to step out of how I perceive the world and step into how my client perceives the world. So I'm able to see them as they see themselves. I'm able to see the situation in their lives as they see it. Are we together? Let me give an example of how we don't use empathy in our relationships. When someone comes and tells you a specific problem that you have solved before very quickly, what do you tell them? Hiyo ni rahisi. We na wewe ni nini? That is kitu rahisi. Very simple. Do A, B, C, D. Lack of empathy. That means you need to, as a counselor, this is where empathy comes in. I need to ask myself, why is this difficult for Irene? Even if it's not difficult for me. Why is it difficult for Irene? So from the story that Irene has given me, maybe she has come from a family background where it's a dysfunctional family. People don't listen to each other. Maybe the parents do not have a good relationship. So when I see Irene crumbling under a certain problem, now I can put A and B together. And so I can probably respond to Irene and tell her that I get where you're coming from, given your family background. Are we together? that now is empathy, that I'm able to see things the way you see them or to perceive situations the way you perceive them. And as you can see there, I have put quite a number of examples of the counselors, how we operate from an external frame of reference, that I'm not listening to you, I'm responding to you the way I see things or the way I perceive situations. Maybe, John, you can move to the next slide so that they can also see the internal frame of reference. I don't want to go through all of them so that, also because of time, So you can see how the person who is using an internal frame of reference is responding to the client. Instead of telling the client, be strong, even if you have cancer. This person is telling the client that you're frightened at the news, so I'm picking the emotion. You are anxious. Now that you've been told that you have cancer, you are anxious about it. But I'm not telling her, no, don't think about it too much. Don't even go there. You know, that's what we tell people when we are trying to comfort them. Don't dwell on that. Don't think about it too much. Instead, I'm telling you, I get the reason why you are anxious. The other response, that you have mixed feelings about staying in the relationship. I am not telling this young girl who has come to me in a dilemma about a relationship that she's in, I'm not telling her, it is really simple. If this man is not paying attention to you, walk away. That now is lack of empathy. Instead, I'm telling the girl that I have looked at the situation and I get the fact that you are confused. So that means I'm telling her, I can even see the reason why you are confused. Are we together? I hope I'm communicating to somebody. So the effect of empathy is that it communicates acceptance of the client, because I'm not just dismissing you and telling you how easy it is. It communicates an acceptance of the client. At the same time, also, it encourages the client to explore more. That exploration is keeping on. I keep talking about myself. I keep talking about how I'm feeling, what I am thinking. At the same time, there's something very important about empathy. It enables us to create a therapeutic relationship with a client. When you hear the word empathy, what do you think? What comes to mind? When you hear the word therapy, what comes to mind? Watu wamelala huko nyuma. I think it wasn't a good idea for us to eat fast. When you hear of the word therapy, what comes to mind? Therapy? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. With physiotherapy. Anything therapeutic is healing. Thank you. So he talked about physiotherapy that helped him to do what? To heal his leg. Anything therapeutic is healing. And that's why even we talk about psychological therapy, because it's healing of the mind. So we are talking about, can you imagine a relationship that has the power to heal? That's what we are saying that empathy introduces. Because most people, we are living in a world where we barely have time to listen to each other. Everybody is interested in their own agenda, how they feel, what they think, how they behave, and what is going on. But imagine when you're able to actually communicate to the other person that I can see what is happening within you and around you. That's the power of empathy. And that's why we are saying that it helps us to build a therapeutic relationship with a client, a relationship that is actually healing. And these are skills we do not only have to use in counseling. Try to use them even with the people around you, and you will see how much of a difference they actually make. All right. We look at unconditional positive regard. I think that one sort of gives you a clue as to what we are talking about. What is unconditional positive regard? Unconditional positive regard. It is already there. John is running ahead of me. What do you think of unconditional positive regard?
Okay, my layman definition will be... Sorry, my name is Betty.
Yes, Betty.
My layman definition will be not being biased about a situation.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Not being biased about a situation. Unconditional means that whatever you receive is not based on certain circumstances or qualifications. Who do we know for a fact loves unconditionally? Sorry? God. Yes, Christ. Because there are no conditions at all to his love. None. He does not say that to come to you, you have to come to me, you have to be like this. Imagine as human beings if we developed that quality. So it means unconditional positive regard means that I accept the other person simply for the fact that they are human, regardless of their pre-existing circumstances. When we talk about pre-existing circumstances, I'm talking about behavior, I'm talking about appearances. What else makes us to discriminate against people? Social status, culture, race, ethnicity, especially in our country, true or not? But observing UPR or unconditional positive regard means that I accept the person. You know, we are told that there is some form of sanctity to the human race. And of course, that is because we are made in the very image of who? Very image of God. So when you are able to now respect that sanctity, accept the person, and it's not just about their behavior, even if their values are different from theirs. Anyone who wants to tell us what values are? What is a value? A belief system. Very true. Anything else? Our sense of right or wrong. What we believe to be right or wrong. Or what we give priority to. I'm especially explaining this because we tend to be, as human beings, we tend to discriminate against others whenever they possess different value systems from ours. So that even when someone comes to me for help, and maybe they have done something that I think is wrong, how do we treat them? A young girl comes to you, they have aborted. When they mention abortion, what do? You jump. Shindwe. Someone said shindwe. Don't you fear God? You young people nowadays. What is happening what kind of family do you come from? What happens when someone of a different religious orientation comes to you? What do you think the minute you see them? Children of Satan, eh? That's exactly what I mean. You can see how powerful. And you know the funny thing is, we tell ourselves that this conversation is happening within our minds, but the client can actually sense. Because the same way you are observing their nonverbal behavior, they are also observing yours. What about people who are of a different social status? When the person walks in through the door and we have looked at them, we see how they are dressed. And then in our minds we say immediately, see class yangu, they belong elsewhere. So maybe there's even a language that I can use with them that I don't use with other people who I think are of my caliber. Very sad. You know, I like, when I look at this skill, I like talking about the ministry of Christ. Because when you look at his ministry, what you see a lot is what? Unconditional, positive regard. That I came for sinners, I did not come for the righteous. I came for the sake of sinners. John 4, the Samaritan woman. Did he judge her? No. He asked her how many, he said, go and bring your husband. And she said, I don't have a husband. And he told her, you're right. That one you're with is not your husband. And he also told her, you have had many. Now imagine if this woman came to, if she had gone to a Pharisee, you wicked woman, we should stone you. I don't know how come you're alive at this particular point in time. You see the things we actually do even in church sometimes that discourage people from joining us. Because we are acting from a point of self-righteousness. I do not want to be contaminated. And then we fail to offer the same acceptance that will heal this person, that will make them see Christ, the King we represent on this earth, that will make them to be attracted to the kingdom that we represent. So it's important, and that's why, when we have looked at the slides differently, but when it comes to unconditional positive regard, empathy, and genuineness, they are called attitudes. That's why I separated them a bit from the other skills, because it is something we have to learn not just put on, but to possess, so that it changes the attitude that we have towards the human race, the attitude that we have towards each other. So what is the purpose of unconditional positive regard? First of all, acceptance creates a therapeutic relationship between you and your client. The healing relationship, again, that we were talking about. Number two, when someone is accepted, they learn to accept themselves. That is the power of acceptance. If you go right now, you go to town, and you meet maybe a street child, and they come to you, they are talking to you, and you actually pay attention to them, and you listen to them. Have you ever looked at what happens when you do that? Have you looked at their faces? What happens even if they don't tell you? Their faces begin to glow. That tells you that healing has taken place. The rejection they have faced outside there, it has been cancelled by the acceptance you have given. Okay? And that's why we talk about it, helping the person in terms of even accepting themselves and healing them. And finally, the client feels safe. When you're not being judged, you feel safe to talk about anything. So whatever this person has done before, they will not be afraid of telling you. They will tell you right away. Okay? All right. The last skill in terms of the attitudes is genuineness. Now, genuineness, what is genuineness? I'm sure it's a term that we have come across before. Or rather, I'm imagining, let me be a counselor, not I'm sure. I imagine it's a term that we have come across before, even from a layman's perspective. What is genuineness? To be genuine? Being real? Being honest? Sorry? Being honest with someone, being real, being authentic. When you are a real person, it means you're not pretending, you're not faking it. So genuineness is the ability to bring in your total personality as the counselor to bear on your relationship with your client. That when you meet me, you meet Jane. Not Jane the counselor who is the professional. When we call ourselves professional, there's a certain image that we have to do what? A certain way we have to behave, a certain way that there's a certain way we have to portray ourselves. That you meet Jane the person, so that if Jane, enjoys, sometimes Jane has a sense of humor, then you meet that Jane. Not because I'm laughing at you, but because I can help you to bring humor to a certain situation that you could not even laugh about. That is the realness that I'm talking about. That I don't hide behind the fact that I'm called a counselor. I do not try to be an expert in this scenario where I'm communicating even in terms of my body language that I know better than you. And the beauty of genuineness is that you challenge the client to also be genuine and authentic with himself or herself, and even with you. Do you know, majority of us, we might not lie to other people, but do you know we keep on lying to ourselves? We keep on lying to ourselves. We might not lie to other people, but we keep on lying to ourselves. This is what I mean by lying to ourselves. That there's a difference between who you think you are and who you really are. So this is a challenge for us also to grow in that perspective, so that as we continue to be authentic, our clients can also be challenged to also be authentic. Any question now from what we have talked about? As people stretch. Any question? Any question? As people stretch? Ndio waliolala waamke. Sorry?
How do you differentiate counseling and peer support?
Very good question. He's asking, how do you differentiate counseling from peer support? Now, you can use counseling to support a peer. Peer support simply means that your people, a peer can be someone with, you're of the same age, you're of the same, like at the workplace, you maybe belong to the same, I'm trying to look for a word for that. Is it category, the same what? The same cadre at the workplace. That's a peer. And the reason why it is, the beauty of that is that someone does not feel threatened coming to you, because then they don't see you as a person who is maybe higher than them, which would threaten them. Yes. I hope I've answered your question. Any other question? Mm-hmm. Did you tell me your name?
No, I'm Faith.
Yes, Faith.
Just like the way sometimes we see pastors,
Mm.
bishops, then we are like, because they are servants of God, maybe they don't experience problems.
Mm.
So do you, as a counselor, sometimes also counsel?
Am I counseled? Yes, I see a therapist. Right now I am seeing one. Yes. It's important to also seek help, because you can also get overwhelmed by hearing others, and yet you are also not exhaling. And then you're also human, so you also have your own problems. And growing means that every other time, you also have somebody else who is walking that journey with you. And there's something you have introduced that I forgot to mention when it comes to genuineness. You see, the genuineness also helps you to see the other person who is helping you as a human being. You get what I'm saying? I mean, who wants to go and tell their problems to someone who looks like they don't have any problems? Do you want to do that? No, because if I don't have a problem, if I have no challenges, then I'm probably going to judge you. But if I can portray myself as someone who is human enough to actually experience challenges, then you will come to me and you will be open with me. Okay? Yes, Irene. Mm.
As a counselor and you're as a counselor and you're going to see someone else, are you allowed to talk about your patients or your whatever is being discussed with you? Am I making sense?
Yes, you are.
Oh, okay. Yeah, are you allowed to talk to the other counselor about your sessions, basically?
Yes, but with a limit. The limit is that I do not disclose the names of my clients. I do not give information that might help the person who's listening to me identify the person. So if, for example, I'm going to see Alfina because I have a challenge with a certain case and I would like someone to consult with, then I will tell her of the case, but not the details, the identifying details, what we call the identifying details. Yes. So I have specific areas where I know that these are the places that I have challenges, and that is what I will especially focus on. Any other question? Mm-hmm. So we have Faith, we have, there's also a question on that side.
Praise God. I'm called Janet. Where you said we should not be touching a counselee, I agree, but how about in a case where in a funeral and maybe somebody's... do I start again?
Sorry about that. Yes, please start again.
Okay. I'm called Janet. You've just told us we should not be touching, which I agree, but how about a case whereby, for example, we are in a funeral somewhere, someone is mourning a dad or a mom, and they are so overwhelmed that they are falling down. Hakuna venye anaweza simama peke yake, umsimamishe, umpe hata maji ya kunywe. Si hiyo pia kutouch saa ingine pia inasaidia. It helps in other ways.
Janet is really defending touching, eh? Yes, of course. Because now that one, you're responding to serious distress. Because if you don't pick them up, then someone can even step on them, or they have fainted and so they are helpless. That one, yes. The one we are saying that no touching is where I can tell that you're stable in as far as, your composure, your physical composure is concerned. But now, where the distress is in terms of the emotions. Even that one is caused by the emotions, but now that one is extreme. But for as long as you can stand up, you can sit uprightly. If you're crying, then I don't interrupt with that. Yes. You can see how we go wrong even in funerals when we are busy patting people and rubbing their backs and telling them, do not cry. I think there were questions on this side. Let me start with the lady because I have not heard her voice.
And we've said that you don't interrupt them, so you observe silence
So you're silent. So how long do you keep that for? How do you bring that to an end? Yeah, because you don't want to interrupt them. You're observing silence. You feel you want to go. I mean, how do you handle that situation?
If someone is crying, for as long as they are crying. Because you cannot cry. I've never met somebody who cries for hours. Unless it is a ceremony.
Let me clarify.
Uh-huh.
Okay, maybe they're not crying, but they're quiet now. You don't want to interrupt their space, but you want to console with them. Now, do you also just sit and wait for them to get out of it and start talking to you? What do you do?
Yes, you sit with them. Uh-huh. Yes. Yeah. So even with someone who is grieving, the silence, of course, is still important. Instead of talking a lot. In fact, if I were to allow the counselors who are here to share, what happens most of the times in funerals is that as I was saying, we actually interrupt people's processes because we are too eager to support, and we feel uncomfortable when we are not saying anything. Your presence is more important than what you are saying. Because majority of the things that we actually say in funerals are wrong. Like stop crying. Things will, they've gone to a better place. It's going to be better. Life will go on. God knows. It is true, God knows. But nobody wants to hear that on that particular day. It's true, God knows, but no one wants to hear it on a day like that. So the silence is actually worth much more than even your talking. So sit with them. Most of the time when someone is quiet, and I like now, let me introduce what Alfina has saying, a trauma situation. Sometimes people are shocked now. The silence might be out of shock. You know, you can become numb. Something can shock you until you don't speak. It's like your mind is just floating somewhere in space. There is also that scenario. Again, you allow them the silence for a while, but then you can now begin. If it's in a trauma situation, you also want to understand how they would like you to help. Maybe they would require some form of practical help, a way that you can respond without interfering with their processes. I hope I have answered your question. Okay.
Yeah, I also think that it's also good to qualify because, again, it depends on the relationship that somebody has with the person who is bereaved. Maybe it's a near relation. I don't think that this should also apply to a near relation. What do you think?
I'm laughing because that's how we defend ourselves. You see, and that's why I'm saying that silence is even better than your talking, because what is this you want to say? Sometimes we imagine that what we are saying is what will help the person feel that we are there. And that's why we need to also understand the power of psychological presence. I wish we had time, Maybe I'll come back, we can do that. And we were to ask people who have had experiences of their loved ones dying. And then we talk about the things people have told them versus the people who just come and sit with them. And we ask them which one was more helpful. You can be sure it is the silence. It is the presence, not what you are saying. Unless it has to be said. But if you can tell that the person, maybe you had gone to the mortuary to view the body, and then this person just now seems to, after maybe crying for a while, they become quiet. You may want to check in just once in a while to see whether they are totally fine, so that again you are not ignoring somebody maybe who's in another way distressed. But then it is better to allow them that silence for a while. Mm-hmm. Mm. 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 Mm-hmm. Mm. 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 Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Good question. I'm tempted to call you Faith's husband, but please tell me your name. Yes, Pius. Very good question. That is a skill that we call self-disclosure, and we are going to cover it. The answer is yes, but now I will explain those parameters that you're concerned about. Okay? Yeah. All right. So we move on so that the last question, so that now we are also able to pace.
Maybe I'm just concerned that as a counselor, do you have restrictions of who you need to counsel? Do you have a border? Maybe counseling your spouse, your mother. Do you people have restrictions that hapa ndio unatakana ufike? Yeah.
Yes. We call that dual relationships. You cannot counsel your mother, your parents, your siblings, your husband, your wife. Don't test them, it will go wrong, trust me. You do not want to counsel your friends, even your friends' children, people you have a relation, your business partner. The list, what else haven't I mentioned? Your own children. Sometimes there's a student who was asking me, but Mwalim, can't I just go and counsel my daughter? Then you give me the letter, instead of me going to pay somebody else that money. No, you cannot. And the reason why we do not do those dual relationships in counseling is that instead of doing your work as a counselor, you'll be trying to preserve the relationship you already have. And so that means that you might not be, for example, you might not be able to challenge this person the way you would want to. You know, sometimes counseling needs you to challenge the person. So you might not be able to challenge the person. You might not be as truthful with them as you would with another person. And so, again, you can lose both relationships. Both the counseling relationship as well as this other relationship. Try counseling a spouse, for example. And you know, most people, the ones who haven't done counseling, there is one term especially that they have caught on to. Psychoanalyze. You're trying to psychoanalyze me. I can tell you it will not go well. All right? Okay, so we proceed. So the other skill, John, I want to go slide by slide. Oh yeah, thank you very much. So that I'm not confused. So we have another set of skills that we call responding skills. And they are the three as you see them there. We have paraphrasing, we have reflection of feelings, and then we have summarizing as a skill. Now, let's start with paraphrasing. Anyone who's ever heard of paraphrasing? What is paraphrasing? Para and then phrasing. What is paraphrasing?
It's giving a brief of summarizing what you've been told, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Summarizing what you've been told. But how? The specifics. What is different about it from summarization?
It's more detailed.
Mm-hmm. It is more detailed. There's a gentleman who's doing this. Let him help you. Sasa umekata. To para and then phrase. Mm-hmm. It is, remind me your name, please. No, that is Janet.
My name is Beryl.
Yes, Beryl.
It could be saying what somebody else has said, but using different words.
Very good. Yes. Rewarding the other person's statement. That means you're saying what I am saying. The meaning is the same, but the words are very different. So it is rewarding another person's statement, but retaining the same meaning. That's what we mean by paraphrasing. Now, why do we need to paraphrase? Remember, I already said that this class of skills is called responding skills. And so the first thing that we need to understand, I may not have put it as an importance, but when you paraphrase, it makes you to avoid using questioning a lot. Okay? Now, the other importance of paraphrasing is that it helps the client to feel understood and listened to. Because if you're able to paraphrase what I'm saying, especially put it in different words, it means you must have been listening to me. Okay? So it helps the client to feel understood. It allows further exploration. So if you can understand me, in fact, if you are paraphrase accurately, this will be the client's response. Oh, yes, in fact, umegonga ndipo. That is what I meant. And then they will continue to talk. So it helps the exploration process that I can continue talking to you because I feel you are actually getting what I'm saying. At the same time also, it shows the speaker that, yes, you are following what they are saying, and it helps in clarifying. You're checking with the client that what you meant to tell me is actually what I have understood, so that you are both at a common place in terms of what you are saying. Now, in the next slide, John, I have some possible introductory phrases to paraphrasing. How do we paraphrase? You know, these are just, it's not a must that you use this. They are just possible introductory phrases. So what you're telling me is, it sounds like you know, such things. And so the next slide, John. Now, I want us to try. The first one has an answer. The first paraphrase, the first question has an answer, but it is the second that I want you to make an attempt to paraphrase. Remember, you are rewarding someone's statement. So I will read out. Some of us get better by hearing. I really can't apply for that placement. It's not that I cannot do it. I just can't stand the thought of the interview. So look at how the counselor responds, rewarding that person's statements. Number one, so you will forego the job even if you're qualified for it to avoid going for the interview. The second statement, so it's not that you doubt your ability to do that job. You just don't want anything to do with the interview process. So you can see, same meaning brought out, but different what? Different wording. Now, I want us to give this a shot, the second statement, that I'm so confused, I just don't know whether to transfer to that other course or carry on as I am. Someone try and paraphrase. Same meaning, different words. That I'm so confused, I just don't know whether to transfer to that other course or to carry on as I am. Who wants to paraphrase? Pius. Don't laugh at me. I'm wondering whether my mind caught the wrong thing in terms of the pronunciation. Do you prefer going to the other course or just... don't make it a question, make it more of a statement. So if you were to slash the do you... So you prefer going on to the other course or remaining the way you are? Not quite. Look for the key message. What is the client communicating? The key message. What are they communicating? Confusion. So confusion. Now that you have captured that, now try and paraphrase. Different, same meaning, different wording.
Gladys here. So you are saying you don't know whether to transfer. So you are saying you're not sure whether to transfer to the other course or to remain where you are.
So you are saying, that is close, Gladys. So you are saying whether you don't know whether to transfer to the other course or to remain where you are. Now, don't get frustrated. I'm saying you're close because you have almost used there. There is a statement here. There are quite a number of words that you have repeated. Yes. What if you want to not repeat those words? Use different wording, but the same meaning.
Let me give it a try. Would you like to change your career?
Would you like to change your career? That's a question.
It feels like you are interested. It feels like you are interested in a different course, and you are wondering whether you should pursue it or continue with what you're doing right now.
Yes. Yes, it sounds like you're interested in a different course and you're wondering whether to pursue it or continue with what you are doing. Good. Anyone else would like to attempt? Yes, Irene.
It sounds like you're torn between something new and what you're currently undertaking.
Good. It sounds like you're torn because that's exactly what the client is communicating. That's the key message. It sounds like you're torn between what you're currently doing and a different course. Or it sounds like you're torn between the two causes. The less words you use, even better. Because what you're targeting, the key message. That you listen to the key theme. What is this the client wants me to capture? What do they want me to hear? And the importance of paraphrasing, or we talked about the importance, sorry, those were just examples. So we are good with that. Let's go to the second skill, which is reflection of feelings and content. Now, reflection, when we talk about reflection, what comes to mind? Reflection. If you're reflecting, what comes to mind? If you're reflecting, what comes to mind? Or when you hear the word reflect, what comes to mind? Don't overthink. Sorry? I have flashback. What else? Mirror. Very good. Mirror. Now, reflection is actually called mirroring. So what am I doing when I am mirroring? I am telling the client, look here. This is what is going on within you. And that's why we are talking about reflection of feelings and content, in the sense that I am helping the client. If they were not aware of how they were feeling, now I can be able to bring that out. If they were not aware of the meaning of what they were saying, the content, then I can help them to do what? To bring that out. That's why we call them mirroring. So when you think of, we call it mirroring. When you think of reflection, think of a mirror, and you as the counselor being the mirror. Because sometimes people are unconscious about the implication of what they are saying, or even about the feelings behind their expression. Are we together? So reflecting is almost similar to paraphrasing. Because reflection, but the difference is that reflection now focuses more on the feelings. There is a feeling aspect. I'm being reminded we are short of time. So the purpose is that it stimulates the client to express their feelings more comfortably. If I can be able to pick out your feelings, then that means that, I'm validating them. Another thing that we are used to as human beings, we do it unconsciously, is that we tend to invalidate people's feelings. We dismiss what people are feeling, and we tell them, you're ni kidogo, you are too sensitive. But when, as a counselor, I'm able to pick out those feelings, then I'm validating them. I'm telling them there's nothing wrong with you. So it stimulates the client to express their feelings, and it demonstrates the counselor's empathy. So you're going to look at the slides later. You can look at the examples of reflection of feelings. I have around 2. And you can see, let me just read the first one so that you can see what we mean. So the client is saying, my mother told me I was adopted when I was 13 years old. After that, I went wild for a while, running around with a bad crowd. I didn't know who I was anymore. My world fell apart. So the counselor has picked out 2 feelings. 2 feelings, 2 feeling words. You felt lost and confused, because it is the essence. Again, just like in paraphrasing, you're picking the essence of what the client is saying. The difference in the reflection of feelings is that now you're picking the essence of what I am saying, but especially the emotional aspect of what I am saying. Are we together? All right, the third responding skill, that is summarization. Now, summarizing, let me just do this so that we can move quickly. Summarization means that you tie together different aspects of what has been talked about in the session. Are we together? That we tie together different aspects of what has been discussed in the session. And what is the purpose of summarizing? It helps us, one, to bridge the gap from one session to the other. That in the previous session, Irene, we talked about A, B, C, D. And you decided that you would go and do A, B, C, D. So where are you at in as far as that is concerned? So I have bridged the gap from the last session to this particular session. Another importance of summarization is that it helps to focus. So maybe in a session, this client has been talking for maybe 30 minutes straight. That can make it can make your mind to start scattering. So to help yourself and even the client to focus. So you can tell the client that, Faith, for the past 30 minutes, we have been talking about A, B, C, D, or I have heard you say A, B, C, D. Out of these things that you have talked about, which one would you like us to start with? You have now done what? Focused. So it is used to focus. Another importance is that it can be used to end a session. So in this session, we have talked about A, B, C, D. And you have decided that you would like to go and try out A, B, C, D. So in the next session, Maybe we can start there. Or would you like us to start there in the next session? So it helps you to end a session as well. That is summarization. Okay, skill number 13. We go to a category of skills we call challenging skills. Now, I would like to emphasize that counseling, any healthy relationship, not just counseling, note this. Counseling or any healthy relationship should have a balance of support and challenge. A balance of support and what? And challenge. And that's why we bring in the element of challenging skills. So the challenging skills that we have here are concreteness, confrontation, self-disclosure, and immediacy. So let's start with concreteness. Now, when we talk about concreteness, concrete, something that is concrete is very tangible. True or not? Very clear. So it's the ability of the counselor to help the client to be clear in their communication. Sometimes you have people who, and not because they want it, they don't know how to communicate clearly. We are different in terms of how we communicate. So if the client is not communicating clearly, then you ask them to explain what they have said. Like, for example, let me give an example. You might ask a client, so how do you feel? Or how did you feel about that? Then the client says bad. Does bad help you understand how the person is feeling? No. So you may want to ask them, when you say bad, what does that mean? Or what is bad according to you? So the client now goes further and tells you that maybe I was frustrated or I was hurt. Now, clarity. So the ability of the counselor to help the client to be clear in their communication. And how does it help the counseling relationship? Clarity helps to put away any form of ambiguity, that we are not confused. It avoids confusion, the confusion that is usually brought on by the ambiguity. So as a counselor, don't feel uncomfortable asking the client to clarify what they have told you or to explain further. Because if you feel uncomfortable, then you'll be left confused. You don't have sufficient information even to help. So it helps to deal with any confusion or to sort out ambiguous statements. And then also it helps the client to find the language that is a clear explanation of what is happening in their lives. That means not only is it clear to them as clients, it is also clear to you as the counselor. Nobody lives there confused. So that if your client is not a good communicator, help them along so that even the counseling sessions are effective. They don't leave the same way they came in, confused about what is happening. Skill number 14, confrontation. Now, when most people hear confrontation, they think it is war. But there's a kind of confrontation that is actually helpful. In counseling, we say that we confront in a kind way. So what then is confrontation? We call confrontation the ability of the counselor to bring to light or to challenge another person's view of themselves, view of you as a counselor, view of the situations in their lives. Are we together? You're helping them, or rather you are challenging how they look at themselves. You are challenging how they look at you as a counselor. You are challenging how they look at other people. You are also challenging how they look at situations. Let me start with challenging how I look at myself. We have people who suffer from esteem issues. Now, when you listen to those people, the way they describe themselves, is it an accurate representation of who they are? No. So you have this person calling themselves foolish, this person calling themselves lazy, this person calling themselves ugly. Challenging them means that now you challenge that distortion to help them see themselves for who they really are. What makes you think you are ugly? Where is the evidence that you are an ugly person? You know, when you ask for evidence, you're asking for what? Facts. Because if you're saying you're this, or this is this, then you need the facts to justify that. Sometimes I have clients who have anxiety telling me, I don't want to get out of the house because I feel like everybody is staring at me. So I ask them, what makes you think that people are staring at me? No, I can just feel it. You see, there is no even factual evidence. So where is the evidence? No, it's just that I feel, when I feel people's eyes on me. So then I ask the person, so what do you think is going on in their minds? Or what is this that worries you about people looking at you? Because I'm thinking they are thinking how messy my hair is. You see, I'm thinking they are thinking. I'm thinking that they are thinking how messy my hair is, how sweaty I look, how disorganized I look. These are the things that keep people in that vicious cycle of anxiety. And as a counselor, your work is now to break it by challenging. That's why you're asking, where is the evidence? So that when you ask for the evidence, what you're asking in short is it that somebody has told you? Is it that, somebody behaved towards you in a particular way as though to suggest that what you are saying is actually true? Even how the person looks at you can be distorted. People who are timid and shy, how do they describe other people? What is their reason for not talking to other people? What is their reason for not talking to other people, especially specific people? What is their reason for not talking to other people or even approaching them like their boss? Fear. But what do they say about that person? I can't approach so-and-so because they are harsh. They are bold. They are bold. The other person is bold. Harsh, bold, what else? Loud, unkind. And then you ask them, what has this person done to you? Some of them will even tell you, I think maybe Jane doesn't like me. Those are some of the things that they will tell you. I think my boss doesn't like you. So what is it that he has told you or she has told you? How does she behave towards you that tells you that she doesn't like you? And mostly the answer will be nil. Or if there is something, maybe they were being confronted about a situation that actually needed confronting. I hope I'm communicating something. So as a counselor, you are helping them see that what you call dislike is a perception. And if you changed that perception, you'd stop fearing the person. Some people say, I cannot apply for jobs. In Kenya, you need to know somebody. Is it always true? No. And so the person is now tied down. They are not doing anything because of their what? Perception. And that is where challenging comes in. If you ask most people who are depressed, what depresses them? Most of them, it's just an issue of